Welcome back to Gun&ShotTV. We've got kind of an early spring here in Illinois, and I was going to go into an interesting video. It's kind of indoor, kind of outdoor. I wasn't sure if it'd be this nice out, but I was going to talk about cleaning your revolver. Now, this is my GP100. I shoot it quite a bit. I shoot a lot of hand loads in it with cast bullets. I like to keep it clean, not necessarily, you know, clean enough to eat off of or brand new gun clean, but relatively clean. If you look at like the front of the cylinder here, you can see there's no burn rings on there. I cleaned it the other day and scrubbed those off. There's a little bit of carbon buildup around the forcing cone. But if you look, I don't know how well it'll turn out, down the cylinders, they're perfectly mirror shiny. Down the barrel, once again, I'm not sure if I'll be able to get it on camera. But the barrel itself is super clean as well. I like to make sure the gun is as clean as possible, and there's a couple reasons. A, it's going to help with accuracy if the rifling is uniformly clean the whole way. And B, it's going to help with speed loaders. Now, I've been doing some work with some speed loaders, trying out some different speed loaders and stuff. So the important thing is that all your chambers are cleaned out. You also, if possible, like I chamfered these a little bit with a Dremel, so there's not a sharp lip, and it helps the speed loaders go in. But the biggest thing is keeping these clean. My lighter cast loads tend to leave a lot of crap in the cylinder, especially if you're shooting 38s. It leaves a crap ring that now a 357 won't fit down. So it's important that you keep your guns clean, especially if you want to use speed loaders on a revolver. So I'm going to show you how to do that. But to get to that point, I'm going to need to shoot this and get it dirty again so we have an effective test subject. So I'm going to go down to the range and I'm going to shoot some 173 grain Keith, I like to call them Deer Fuckers, but they're the Keith heavy semi-wad cutters. And then I've got some 105 grain Lee, just plinking semi-wad cutters that I use. I've got a load where it's about a nickel a round for 38 special, so I shoot those a lot. I'm going to shoot a bunch of those. We'll get this thing dirty and show you how it looks. And then back home, I'm going to go through and step-by-step show you how I clean it to get it this clean. And you don't have to go this clean. You can, and you know, a lot of people just use a bore snake. If you're shooting like full metal jacket loads, commercial loads, you probably won't get it as dirty as this is going to get. But we'll go down to the range and show you what that looks like. So we're down on our range. We've got our speed loader, and this is a Speed Bees. The guys actually sent me this to test. I was working on a speed loader video comparing and contrasting all of them. So I'm trying to round up every speed loader I can. But in the meantime, I've got one of these Speed Bees, and this is kind of slick. You just shove it in, push down, and it pops everything in. Now these are those 105 grain 38 specials. Like I said, they're nickel round. They're hand cast. I use my own bullet lube, so they're kind of sloppy. They leave a lot of fouling. So, you know, it's one of those things that I don't mind because it's cheap, but it does mean you'll have to clean extra. So I'm just going to dump a bunch of these downrange. Now, an important thing, too, to remember, so part of keeping a revolver clean is keeping the cylinder so it can go in and out. So when you eject your shells, I always want to do this because I want to catch them, but you want to hold the gun vertical and then hit the ejector. The reason being that if you look in my hand, you'll see there's some loose little bits of powder there, and those are unburned powder, fouling, garbage. If that gets underneath your ejector star, it's going to keep the ejector from seating, and then it's going to cause the cylinder to bind when you close it, and so it won't close or it won't spin freely. So that's something you always have to keep an eye on. Like I said, the best way to manage it is make sure the gun's upright when you do it. I don't always remember to do it, but I can tell you that those flakes of powder will get under that star and will cause just a giant pain in the ass if you're not careful. So after only 6 rounds too, you can see that I've already got a nice burn ring starting on the front of the cylinder there. So that's only going to get worse as I shoot more. And you can see there's some bright areas where some shit blew out and kind of kept it clean. But by and large, you'll see that there's a bunch of crud already building up. And that was perfectly spotless just a few seconds ago. So I'm on 38 special load number 2. once again, like I said, vertical, pop them out, all that crud and stuff. And commercial loads usually burn cleaner than this. I'm shooting some low pressure cheap stuff. You'll also see, if you look at the sides of the case here, you'll see these areas where you can see powder and fouling went up the sides of the cylinder. If we look in the cylinder too, you'll already be able to see crud in there. It's nowhere near as clean as it was just a few you know, two cylinders worth ago. You know, and like I said, it's partially the ammo I'm shooting. With commercial loads, you won't have to do it as often, but you'll still need to do it, especially if you want to use speed loaders. So here we are after just six cylinders worth. You can see it's pretty nasty, and like the sides of the cylinder are covered in funk. Like I said, that's partially from my hand loads, and there's powder and crap all over in where the lockup is. There's stuff everywhere on here. So that's just a minimal amount of shooting, really, and it's already that dirty. Now, for good measure, I'm going to shoot some of those 170 grain Keith rounds. So as I said, with these longer 170 grain rounds, they stick out of the case further, but that's not a huge issue. But the cases themselves are longer than 38 Special. So I find some speed loaders that rely on gravity are worse at this. The speed beats are kind of nice because they force the cases down. But you kind of just shove it in and they pop in. You'll see some kind of hung up and didn't seat all the way down. That's going to be because there's that crud ring in there. So, you know, it's something I've found if I'm shooting a lot and switching back and forth, I can use a belled out case to scrape the crud ring out. Or a lot of people just shoot 38 Specials after they shoot 357s to avoid the problem. But here goes with the 170 grain Keith rounds. So after 6 cylinders worth of the 38 Special plinking loads, and after 6 cylinders worth of those heavy duty 357, the gun is now completely filthy. Like I said, they're cast lead, and I'm using cheapo homemade bullet lube. So as you can see, like, there's heavy burn ring. The cylinder is all gross. The frame is all gross. You can see there's all kinds of fouling everywhere. I'm going to see if we can get a look down the barrel here. That's pretty nasty. Looking down the cylinder, I don't know if you'll be able to pick that out, but there's just a layer of crud pretty much everywhere on this gun now. So I'm going to take this home and I'll show you how to clean it to get it as shiny as this one was when we started. The one thing you can do at the range is if you do have a bore snake, those are handy to run through and get the loose crud out before it cools down and turns solid. It's also handy, I like to take a paper towel and wipe this down before I put it back in my holster just to keep all this loose fouling. Because like I said, it's a soft bullet lube I use, so if you wipe it, it comes right off. So especially if you have a paper towel, you'll get all that loose crud off the outside. I like a paper towel because there's some lead content in there, so you know, you want to throw away whatever it is. Now I'm gonna have to wash my hands really well because I showed you how that worked. But so most of that'll wipe off. The burn ring won't, and obviously the fouling in the cylinders and the barrel won't. So I'll show you how to clean that up. Welcome back to Gun&ShotTV. We're back with our now very dirty GP100. Not super dirty. I've seen much worse than this. But like I said, I shot some really dirty hand loads through it just to get it somewhat nasty to make it worthwhile showing you how to clean it. I've got some of the stuff you're going to need before you start. You're going to need some solvent. I like just the number 9 hops. I always pronounce it hops, but apparently it's hoppies. Just general bore cleaner solvent. You probably want some oil. I use Remo because I've got a bunch of it that I bought quite a while ago. I know there's probably better oils or ones people like more. Everybody talks a lot about Ballistol. An oil is an oil. The big thing with oils is some of them are not as good as others and break down faster, so you need to flush them and put in fresh oil. As long as you're flushing it and put in fresh oil, you can use vegetable oil, as we found out with the Fire Queen debacle. Anyways, then if you shoot a lot of lead and stuff, or a lot of copper jacketed, you may need some special cleaners, or sometimes it's just, you know, if the gun's really dirty, it's helpful to have some stronger stuff, and I'll show you how that works. And this is a foaming cleaner, this is a copper remover. I've got some brushes. I've got a brass jag, a spiral brush or tornado brush, whatever you want to call it, a regular 38 brush. I also have a 40 caliber brush, and I'll show you why you need that. I've just got a brass brush, some clean patches, a lead remover, and my bore snake. And I'll start with the bore snake first, because like I said, I didn't actually do it when I shot this because I kind of wanted to let some of the crud stay in there, because if you don't clean right away, it actually is harder to clean the gun. So we'll start with the bore snake. So when I'm at the range, what I like to do is I'll take my bore snake and I'll just quickly pull it through each cylinder. And I keep my bore snakes with just a tad of solvent on them in their bag. So now I know when I'm at the range, I'm using a little bit of solvent. I know some people don't use solvent, but I think the solvent is way more effective at getting that crud off there. And you're just going to go through, I'll probably speed this process up because it's going to be kind of boring on film. Okay, so now I've gone through the cylinders. I did one pass on each. That should be good enough. Obviously, if there's a bunch of following and your bore snake is doing something about it, keep going until it looks a lot better. I'm going to do a pass down the barrel real fast. And you probably want to do the barrel 2 or 3 times. That's usually where most leading occurs. So it's going to be as simple as just pulling it through. And after a couple times, you'll get all the loose crap, you know, the loose fouling out of the barrel. Like I said, if you do this at the range, that's going to save you a whole lot of cleaning headache later, because the fouling won't actually build up in the rifling. And it'll keep it soft, and it'll keep it from turning rock hard. The other thing I usually do at the range, as you can see in here, there's some powder debris. There's usually, because of what I shoot, as you saw, it's very smoky and blows shit everywhere. There's usually stuff all over, so I wipe this down really well with a paper towel at the range and try and get any loose crud that I can see that I can easily get to with a paper towel. I wipe off just to keep it off the gun, because whatever's on the gun, when I put it in the holster, is going to end up in the holster, and then next time I put the gun in there, it's going to get back on the gun again. So I try and keep stuff a little bit clean, but that's optional. So that's about all you're going to get with your bore snake. They're nice. They're a good first step. I definitely recommend keeping one in your range bag, putting a little solvent on it so it's ready to go. And then you can always just real quick run a bore snake through. As these get really dirty and nasty, you can hand wash them or put them in a garment bag and kind of refresh them, get all the crud off them. But it's going to put lead everywhere, so if you're using it in your dishwasher, or not your dishwasher, if you're using it in your washing machine, you might want to run a cycle after you run this just to make sure there's nothing out. And if you're washing, let's say, underwear, I wouldn't wash this because obviously it's going to get lead in something you've got skin-to-skin contact with in a sensitive area. So anyways, that's that step. The next thing I like to do is I like to just use a general solvent. In this case, Hops and I, it's cheap. I use this size bottle because it's easier to work with, but I actually they make like I think it's like a 64 ounce or 32 ounce, it's a big bottle. I get them on Amazon because I think it's like $8 or $10, maybe even $12 on Amazon, but for a giant bottle, and I just keep refilling this bottle. Also, I like to dip stuff in there, so you're going to contaminate it by using a bigger bottle and refilling. When this gets low, I just dump it and make sure that it's cleaned out, just to keep the fluid fresh. If you were dipping your stuff in the big bottle, it's going to end up pretty nasty before you're halfway through. So what I like to use is just a regular brush. I know there are mops for this step, but I think the mops are kind of a pain. All the mops I've ever seen tend to lose all kinds of fibers in the barrel, and they're kind of gross. They also just don't really seem to do that much, and once you use it once, now it's a mop that's covered in filth. So now you're just brushing shit back into the barrel with the mop, because they seem to just trap fouling. Which is a good thing, I guess, but I mean, I've got patches to get the fouling out, and I find that this is a great way to apply the solvent. So I'll also just douche a little in here, just to get that fouling in there loose. Do keep in mind when you got a brush out, look in here for loose flakes of powder or shit, because if powder gets stuck in there, it's going to keep the cylinder from closing, because the ejector won't seat. And so that's one of the big issues I've seen. You'll also sometimes get powder flakes up in here that will keep the crane from closing. And that's something you have to be wary of. When I was shooting, I tried to show you how to make sure that powder falls out, but always check when you're when you're in here and you have the supplies, make sure there's nothing stuck in there. And I like to put a little solvent on there, work it a little bit so it runs through. By the time I'm done cleaning the gun, I'm going to go in with a towel and just wipe that out, and then I'll flush it out with some fresh oil. So anyways, that's about all I do for that step, is just go through and get some stuff working, and kind of let it sit for a few minutes. The other step that a lot of people I don't think do, but is super important if you're using speed loaders, is you got to make sure that your cylinder is clean, and each this when it necks down, they call that the throat, when it necks down there, now this end is 357 or 358, whatever diameter it is, but the backside is big enough for the case. So what I like to use is I use a 40 caliber bore brush, because it'll get in there, and I've found if I just do a regular cleaning, it doesn't touch the fouling where the case jackets are. So I like to go through and just do this with a 40 caliber brush. Now if you're using different from 357, you'll need to figure out what the right brush for the cylinder area is. But you always want to use that chamber brush if there's a variance in the case size. Even like something like 9mm where there's not a huge difference with the case size, if you're having extraction issues, if you're having problems, try using a little bit bigger brush and going in there and making sure that chamber is spotless, because I guarantee you, unless you're doing this step, there's going to be fouling in that chamber that you're not going to touch. You can see all this crud that ran out. From this brush, it pushed all that crud out that I had already gone through with the regular brush, and it didn't do anything. So that's pretty much good enough. The other brush you have, and this is really good for rifling, and you can use it in the cylinder, but like I said, it's only going to get really the end. This is what's called a spiral brush. It's set up so it has coils that rub flat. So it doesn't do that much in the cylinder, but in the barrel, it will go through and drag the whole track of the rifling and make sure that nothing is stuck in there. And it does a really good job at getting out whole chunks of lead. Sometimes on older guns, especially 22s I've seen, there'll be all this crud, like actual built up lead. I bought some 22s that were so dirty when I got them, they looked like they were smooth bores, but it was just because there was lead in the rifling section. So once I got all that out, the gun actually, shot perfectly and performed well, but, the person probably sold it thinking, well, it's junk, it won't shoot right anymore. But it was just lead. Usually, like, the soft, unjacketed lead bullets that are used in 22s, you'd have to, you'd have to, like, pour sand down the barrel to actually cause barrel damage from shooting those, but they will actually lead up really bad, and so you get the same effect of losing your rifling. But in that case, on lead guns, you could just get the leading out and it'll shoot just the same as it ever did. Another thing for revolvers, and I don't actually have one, is they make a product called a Lewis lead remover. It's like almost looks like a cork for, you know, like a rubber cork or a bottle stopper that you wrap with a mesh screen. And you pull the screen and it gets tighter as it goes through. And the screen kind of acts like the spiral brush, but times 10. And it scrapes all that lead out, but it's made of, I think it's brass or copper. So it won't actually scratch the barrel, but it'll get all that lead out in a couple passes or one pass, depending on how thick it is. That's one of those things, I think the thicker the lead is like trying to get lint off a dryer screen. If you have a handful of crap, it's easier to get it off. The thicker the lead is, the better something like a Lewis lead remover will pull all of it out. But you do have to be careful because if it's really tight, I would clean it first before you try the Lewis one, just to get as much barrel diameter back, because you don't want that thing to get stuck in there, because then you're going to have to pound it back the other way and you could have problems with it. But those are really nice for, you know, bullseye shooters that shoot a shitload of cast lead stuff. That is going to save them so much time getting all that lead out, because once, you know, I shot, I think it was 80 some rounds or whatever it was for this, and it's already got some crud in it, and I'm sure it's got a little bit of leading in the barrel. But if you're shooting 2,000 rounds a week or something like that, you're a major competitor, you're gonna have so much lead to scrape out of your barrel. And you know, those people demand the utmost accuracy, so they really need their gun to be perfectly clean. So something like a lead remover works really well. So anyways, we've gone through with our brushes, our solvent. I like to use a jag with a couple tight patches on it as the next step. Now, I'll just do 2. I'm not going to put any solvent on them because there's solvent in the barrel. And I'm just going to shove my patches through. I like to go as far out as I can and then pull back the other way. So you can see that we got all this crud out of the barrel. I'm going to reverse my patches and go the other way with the patches. And we've got yet more crud out of the barrel. Now we're going to do the same thing with the chamber, the cylinder. Okay, and this one is going to be a little bit easier, and you may even go to 3 patches. And it all depends on the size of your jag. Like some jags are really tight, some are really loose. I find the brass ones are a little bit looser, but they're also a very solid material, so you want to be careful you don't put too much crap on there, because they can jam in there and it'd be a pain to get a brass jag out. I said jag out, not jag off. I know what you're thinking. So I'll just go through and, you know, run my patch through everything. Now it's looking a lot better, but there's still some burn rings and some stuff in there. Now I could keep going with the regular solvent here, but I like to do at this point, after 1 or 2 runs with regular solvent, and to save time we'll speed it up a little, I like to switch to a foaming cleaner, or if a gun's really dirty, I like a foaming cleaner, just because it sits in the barrel. Another option, if you're shooting a lot of copper jacket, like I said, something like a copper Terminator, something that's formulated, like my Glock, I almost always shoot FMJ. In fact, I don't think I've ever shot a non-jacketed bullet in there. So that one obviously is more likely going to have a bunch of copper buildup in it, and if you don't have a product specifically for copper, it won't be as effective, so you'll be making more passes. I like the foaming cleaners because you just kind of pump it a little bit, get your barrel full, and it sits in the rifling, and it'll get all this stuff that you wouldn't otherwise get because it sits there. And I like to let it sit for 15-20 minutes. Okay. And so what you can see too, there's actually already some crud on this. Now I just brushed and went through, and I didn't repeat it a bunch, so I'm sure I could have got more with subsequent patches. But I find that this stuff and my bottle's almost out, so I'm having problems getting a nice buildup of it there. But you can see that this stuff is already turning kind of black or gray, and the gun wasn't really that dirty. So the fact that it's pulling more stuff that didn't come off with the first pass with the regular solvent shows you it does work really well. And I just like the fact that I kind of feel like I'm scrubbing it and I'm not doing anything. I let it sit for 15 minutes with that stuff on there, and I'm not doing anything with the gun. It's just sitting there, but at the end of 15 minutes, when we go to, you know, scrape that stuff out, everything's going to come out. Now, the gun isn't super dirty, so I don't think I'm going to need to actually let it sit for 15 minutes. And in the interest of time, being that I'm almost out of time, I'll show you how I finish at the end of that. Once again, I get my 357 diameter brush, 38, 9mm, whatever your brush says, and just kind of brush the barrel a few times. Okay, and then I'll go back to my 40 caliber brush to get the cylinder. Like I said, this is, I mean, super important for speed loaders. You want this cylinder to be absolutely clear so those rounds can just fall in. Some of them, like the Speed Bees, where it pushes the rounds in. It's not as big of a deal, but you still want the rounds to just slide right in there. And, you know, or even if you're just shoot a lot of 38 special and you want to shoot 357, you're going to be going on a hunting trip or something, you don't usually shoot 357, get these chambers super clear, because it would suck to be on a trip in the middle of nowhere, not have cleaning supplies with you, and your gun won't chamber the hunting ammo that you need to shoot. I mean, most people would say, well, you should have found that out before you left by practicing and zeroing your gun. I get it, but I'm saying, let's say you zeroed the gun and then shot some 38 special just for fun and forgot to clean it, you'd be in a world of hurt. Okay. And then I'm also going to do my spiral brush back down the barrel a few passes. Okay, so now I'm thinking this is going to be relatively clean. Like I said, it wasn't totally trashed, but we'll see what comes out with that foaming cleaner versus with the first pass of everything. And like I said, I've been able to get a gun spotless using just regular old Hops 9 cleaner. But I find the foaming, especially with if you got a lot of lead or stuff, does do a good job of getting out stuff that... So this is just one cylinder, and you can see how dirty that is. Now, I had already brushed it and used regular cleaner, and we only let the foaming sit for a few minutes. But you can see, well, you probably can't see, but there's some sparkly little bits in there, and that is going to be little bits of lead that were stuck in the cylinder, and the first time brushing and cleaning did not get, you know, so they're still coming out. So it's something... You know, and all this, you got to remember too, I already ran a bore snake through everything, and that got what it could off, but it only gets the loose stuff. So you can see how dirty that is. We're going to do the same thing with the barrel. As you can see, the barrel had a bunch of crap still in it. And, you know, you will get some crud, too. I don't want to mislead you. You'll get some crud back off your brushes into the barrel when you're cleaning with them. But this is all crap that came out. And then sometimes what I'll do is, after I'm getting a bunch of crap, I will go with an extra. So now I've got 3 patches. Now it will be very tight. It will be hard to get the rod down the barrel. But once we get that rod down the barrel, it's going to have some pretty decent force on the rifling. And if there's any chunks of lead in that rifling, they're going to be forced out. So sometimes when you'll do that, you'll see these giant slivers. If you're getting those, you got some serious leading issues, and I would keep forcing, you know, an extra one down there. Now, like I said, it's going to vary depending on your jag. Exactly how much is too much and what's going to stick in your barrel. Don't ever force something. If it's really tight, you know, back off, clean it some more. You might have some lead that's obstructing it. And then we're going to real quick push these through the cylinder here.
missed that one. And I don't really worry about getting a super clean patch every time. These initial patches are just going to be, you know, sopping up loose particles, so it doesn't really matter if you're running through with the same one or whatever. But you can see all this crud that's coming out. Now, in the interest of time, I'm probably going to cut this a little bit short, in that if you want your gun to be absolutely perfect, you're going to want to keep going with the brushing and alternating clean patches. But here's a clean patch, and that's a pretty clean patch. I could probably go through with a couple more solvent and maybe pull a little bit more out of the barrel, but at some point you're just wasting your time too, because you're going to shoot it and get it dirty again. So I try not to get too wrapped up, but you can see that it's coming pretty clean right now. I'm still getting a little bit of crud. On the cylinder, you'll get crud out from under the ejector star when you go through with passes like that. So let me show you what that looks like. Rubbing this cloth to get whatever's on the ejector star out. There was all that crud in the ejector star. You'll also get some in here. I like to make sure that my stuff spins free. Like this one spins pretty free. The GP100 design has some ball bearings in there. But once it gets dirty, it will get slow and have problems. Smith's, it's really easy to take out a screw and the whole cylinder falls out. GP100 is a little more advanced to take that apart. If you guys are interested, I can make a video showing how to take this apart. I think there's a bunch already on YouTube, so you know, it's nothing that I need to specifically do. But that's pretty much it as far as the cleaning. The only other thing there is burn rings, build up on the frame here. Now you can sit here, and I've done it this way. You can sit here with a solvent covered brush and just scrub the cylinder, and it will make a difference, but it will take a lot of elbow grease. And you can see that even just the brushes for cleaning it has made circles of clean in the middle of the burn rings. But if you don't want to spend all day scrubbing to get those stupid burn rings off, seeing as they're just going to come back the next time you shoot the gun, what I like to use is one of these Birchwood Casey lead removers. There's, I think Clean Bore makes one. There's a whole bunch of people that make lead remover cloths. So you don't have to buy a specific one. What it is it's just a cloth that's been impregnated with this chemical that removes lead. It's not going to eat your hands or do anything super bad, other than you'll be obviously exposed to lead when you're using it because it sops up lead. It will get very dirty like this. It's actually not that dirty, but it'll get black. You can keep using it even though it's dirty until it stops cleaning, which is going to be a very long time. And what it's going to do is it's going to get all the lead like out of the crane here. You can see that even though I wiped that, I'm getting all that crud out of the top of the frame window here. And in the back, I like to especially get this back area because you'll get some crud back here that over time can build up and bind the cylinder and cause issues. It also gets up in this screw hole for the sight adjustment. And so if it gets too much crap in those threads, it can cause the screw to rust, it can cause it to seize up. So I like to make sure I get in there and get as much of that falling off, and I'll a lot of times break out a toothpick and get up in that threaded hole and make sure that I get all the crud out of there. But usually, like, people don't usually worry about this section that much because it doesn't show. The big thing people are always worried about as far as aesthetics is this. And if you go to sell a gun, you know, take the time, spend the $5-10, whatever these cost, and clean these burn rings, and I guarantee you'll get more for the gun than you would otherwise. So you can see right now the thing is just as dirty as when we started in the burn ring area. And I'm just going to rub one section here with my lead cloth. And you can see that was just, I'm not even pressing hard, like that was just a little bit of gentle scrubbing, and that lead ring is gone right where, you know, right where I was rubbing. You can go through and spin the cylinder, you can do a whole bunch of different stuff, but really, like I said, the lead cloth is the best way I've found. I've seen some guys who use flits and like a Dremel to polish it, or flits on a cloth. I'm not a big fan of flits for this application because flits, even though it says it's not abrasive, it's actually like 20% abrasives. Like, it's whatever the amount it can be without being abrasive is what amount of abrasives it has in it. So over time, you're going to wear down this cylinder face if you're using a physical means of removing these burn rings. Whereas this, I'm pretty sure works chemically, whatever the crap in it is. And it might have some abrasives, but I like to do stuff by hand in areas where changing the dimensions are going to screw up the gun. So you can see I went through and I just kind of rubbed this for a second here, and all that burn ring is pretty much gone. The only area that still has some burn ring is right where I can't get to with my fat thumb. So what we'll do to get in there is I'm going to grab a toothpick. So I have just a regular toothpick. I'm going to break it off so it's a little bit thicker. And then you got options. You can stick it on this, or I like to just grab a piece of cloth and cut it off in a little square. It gives me a little bit easier place to work, and I don't have to worry about that whole cloth. And I'm just going to hold it in the groove here and spin the cylinder with my other hand, because it's going to be hard to get in there otherwise. Okay, so you can see already most of it is gone. Now I've got a little bit further out on the cylinder that I need to address. Okay. And this little square is kind of dirty. Like this is getting to the end of its useful life, because I've done this with it a number of times. But, you know, for the amount of work it is, I don't always clean the burn ring off. I usually will do it, you know, every 6 months or whatever. Like, I don't care about it because I do shoot enough. But over time, like, the burn ring can get thick enough that you can have issues. But as you can see, spinning it on a toothpick has got almost all that off. Not 100%, but it's most of it. There's also some loose crud on there because you do get some of the solution comes off this rag. It's not really a liquid, it's more of a paste, but you'll get some of the paste off. So sometimes if you wipe it, you'll get that excess paste off that has crud in it. And then if there's fine details, like there's a little spot here that I can't get to with my fat fingers, you go in there with your toothpick, you'll get that off. You know, if there's areas in the underlug that you want to get, it makes it so you don't have to do all the scrubbing. The chemical composition or whatever it is will do the scrubbing for you. So now we have no burn rings, or relatively no burn rings. Might do a little bit more scrubbing here just to make sure it's perfect. And there you have it. Like that. I mean, this gun looks like new. The only way you can tell it isn't is obviously there's some wear in the hammer. Before I put the shim kit in, I was just shooting it, and so it got some wear on the frame. And then, like, I know no one can see it, but there's like a tiny ding on the flat here. You know, there's some stuff I can tell that I've used it, but like if I were trying to sell this gun, I doubt that a gun shop would really be able to pick it out other than the drag line on the cylinder. So the one last step that I like to do is I like to go through with a little bit of oil, and I like to just put some oil like on the ejector rod and work it through the cylinder so it's coming out this end. It's not as good as an actual taking apart and cleaning it, but if you keep flushing all that crud out and you keep flushing new oil through, it's going to keep it relatively clean. The one problem you have with that approach is excess oil can cause crud to stick in there. So you do want to keep the gun like this for a while and let all that oil run out. Keep wiping the rod as you go through and get any excess out of there, and get any excess out from under the ejector. But I like to keep fresh oil through there just because otherwise the oil gets thick. Also, most people will put a little dab on either side of the hammer and then either side of the trigger, just to make sure that it's all clean. Usually it's not a concern, but sometimes these notches on the cylinder, where the cylinder stop hits them, will get crud. Like these are a tiny bit dirty, so I've never had to actually scrub these with anything. I just wipe them out with a cloth with some oil on it, because they're usually pretty clean. If it is nasty, you may have to use solvent, but it's one of those last second, I just usually wipe them out. I've never had them get super dirty, because you got to remember that the locking tab is always pushing in there and pushing any fouling out. But I have seen guns where it's super nasty and, you know, it's not locking up correctly because there's flakes of powder or stuff in there. So do keep an eye on them, but it's not like an every time thing. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, you've got some excess oil now from putting some oil in there. So you want to either wrap it up in a cloth or, you know, store it vertically for a while so all that crap can run out. But I find that flushing the oil that way, I don't really have to take it apart and clean the internals often. Well, that's something I do every now and again just because I kind of enjoy taking guns apart. But for Gun and Shot TV, this is Chris. Hope you learned some stuff. I hope you can now go out and get the stuff and get your stainless gun looking like this. Like I said, those burn rings, all the methods I've tried, you know, that lead remover cloth saves you so much time. So just pick one of those up. They're $5, $10, whatever. And thanks for watching. Have a great day.